And welcome to HBYOB Brewcast, where we talk beer. Talk about brewing beer, making beer, and tonight, bottling our brew. We're going to be talking the difference between kegging and bottling, and maybe a few different ways to store your recipe that you made. This is Easy Kill. I'm joined tonight with Chris Allen and Joey Brumley. Chris, how you doing this evening?
Not too bad. We were just discussing, a bit offline beforehand. I'm glad to be back after taking a short week off due to the kids getting me sick. So this is breaking news to you guys. I have not had a drink since our last podcast. So it's been 2 whole weeks.
Whoa!
Since I've had a beer, because I've been sick and I didn't want to, bring my, tank my immune system before being able to come back. So I'm ready to have a drink and talk brewing with you guys.
All right, and what beer do you have?
I've got a blackberry mango Slurpee. It's a smoothie style Berliner Weiss from 450 North. And as I said beforehand, I'm a sucker for cool can art. I'm not even a huge fan of a Berliner Weiss, like the style. But like if it has cool can art in it, I'm probably gonna drink it. So I had to.
All right. And I did mention it early, and Chris didn't get the memo because he was sick. Because of Easter, we were supposed to be doing hoppy beers today to get you ready for the big Sunday holiday.
That's such a good idea too.
It's a great idea, but somebody did not pass that on. Mr. Joey Brumley, the owner of HBYOB, who helps us out and lets us do this. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I am.
Tell me you brought a hoppy beer.
I did.
You're a good man.
In the season, I have the Trogs Blizzard of Hops Winter IPA. So to finish the season, I figured it's time to put this one to bed.
All right. Go ahead and crack that open.
What do you have, Mark?
I have, and I know we did the other day, but it was the most hops I could find. And I'm not even a hop guy, but the fact this says 8 hop on it, that's what I'm going with. Ooh. I have a Voodoo Ranger 8 hop pale ale New Belgium. So that's what I'm drinking. And I don't even know what the hell the 8 hop means. I'll look it up here in a second, but
I believe Simcoe's one of them.
You believe that out of 8, you think that's one?
I'm pretty sure I've had that beer before.
Oh, I can smell Peter's cottontail in there. Are you guys okay? Easter, I guess, isn't necessarily known as the most popular of the drinking and alcohol holidays. If we're going to do a quick, Chris, I'll start with you. Give me your top 3 drinking holidays.
Let's see. For me, I would say starting off with, because I don't want to go with the obvious pick, with being St. Patty's Day. So I'll start off with something a little bit different. I'm gonna start with Thanksgiving. We'll go from there. We'll just jump straight into.
Well, you Christmas. Can't just say that Thanksgiving. That's like saying Thanksgiving, but you don't tell me that your family eats, Big Macs instead of turkey. Why is Thanksgiving a big day for you? For
drinking, it's typically because the last few years I've been I cook for Thanksgiving, so I'll smoke the turkey or the ham and like most of the meat that comes with it. So I'll be standing outside for 6 to 8 hours smoking some meat. Right. So I'll crack a few while I'm standing outside.
Okay, so this is a personal day, meaning you drink more because you're doing the cook. It's not necessarily because you're sharing with family members or anything.
Oh, no, it's mine. Right. It's not for them.
Numbers. You go too long. Give me your second one, and we'll go from there.
All right, then Christmas would be my second one, and then I'll throw in the St. Patty's.
St. Patty's. Now, Christmas. Are you and I'll ask Joey the same thing. I did this the first year, maybe the second year I brewed. I gave people home brew for Christmas because it seemed like a good idea, but I don't know. I think people just thought, what a cheap bastard. He just gave us some dirty bath water that fizzes at the top. I don't know. So I've never done it since. So, do you give or have you given home brew as a gift?
I have beforehand. But that was for a buddy of mine that I knew like wanted the homebrew, and like he had sampled some of my stuff like prior to, so he kind of knew that it was coming. But I haven't done it without at least drinking some of my homebrew with him prior, like that sort of thing.
All right, and Joey, what's your first 2 or 3 drinking holidays?
Number 1 by far is going to have to be Christmas Eve, because that's when all the family gets together. So nothing better than a few.
Plus, I happen to know you're Santa Claus in your family. Santa likes to tip a little bit at your house on Christmas Eve too.
I would say I don't give homebrew as gifts. I never have. However, whenever we have family get-togethers, I will bring it. And if you want to enjoy it, I don't force it. If you want it, great. If you don't, you can pass and go on to the whatever you want. I'd say second, maybe obviously New Year's Eve would be probably number 2. 3, I guess, Halloween, just because I like Halloween.
Yeah, I think now I've heard rumors. I think now Halloween is the biggest party night of all the holidays. I guess next to Christmas, I think. But I think as far as parties go, I think Halloween now has become. I know in the Dayton area, downtown, they do a pretty big deal for for Halloween, and that's obviously a big drinking night. And I know Joey's been invited. Maybe. I guess my biggest drinking holiday night would be Thanksgiving Eve. I go out, we have a big, and we've been doing it. I think we've decided last year we counted 22 or 23 years we've been doing this. All guys, we get together the night before Thanksgiving, and we do nothing but play poker and drink beer, and we do it till 3 or 4 in the morning. So it starts at 7 and we go a long time. So you drink a lot, play a lot of cards. Even we've had to learn now some people will show up and the first time they've ever been there. We now will get 30 or 40 people there, and they'll sit down at the poker table, and the first thing you tell them is it's no limit, $5 max buy-in at a time. And then they go, well, what's each chip worth? And we say a dime. And they go, well, no, the different colors, a dime. Well, that seems stupid. No, we get too drunk. No one can remember by the time it's about 2 in the morning. You get sick of saying, well, that one's this. No, everything's a dime. Put 10 of them out there. If you want to put $10 out, it's a dime. So that's my biggie. We
didn't know each other, Chris, then, but remember when we first started playing cards, we truly had to put a what hand beats what on the wall just to save drunken arguments. Because I've got 3 pair. 3 pair beats 2 pair. You didn't know that?
Yeah.
Gambling and alcohol are just always a good mix. So
yes. Brings out the best.
And I would say on my own, it's always the birthday. There's something about drinking something special on your birthday that's a little
that's a good one.
Entertaining. So I will give that. And so we'll move on. Joey, how's your beer? Is this the first time you've had this beer?
Yeah, this is the first time I've had it. It actually, I don't know what it is. If I had to guess, there's wheat malt in it. It's kind of got a slight tart wheat taste to it. Not a whole lot of aroma in the nose. It's not bad. I wouldn't turn it down, but this isn't something I would say you guys got to go try this before it's off the shelves.
Did it have some spice to it or anything? What is it? Is it a holiday beer or a spice beer or just hops?
Based on the can, says winter IPA, a toast to hop growers around the world for another successful harvest. The storm of hoppy citrus and pine notes is bright reminder that the end of the hop cycle is only the beginning. So that's what I got. It says Centennial, Chinook, Galaxy, and Eldorado hops. 80 IBUs, hazy gold. 6.4% alcohol. I'm actually looking at Beer Advocate right now, which is kind of funny because the first review says I got off the single shelf at Kroger in Dayton near Metro Sports. Where's Metro Sports and which Kroger in Dayton are they talking of?
If I'm not mistaken, Metro Sports Complex, I thought was out in like the Huber Heights area, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I thought it was like farther like towards Dayton.
I was going to say, because I know there's a Kroger on Smithville. That's why my brain immediately went to, but I couldn't think of Metro Sports. Looks like Beer Advocate says it is very good. I would say kind of the same thing. It's very good. It's not bad, but I wouldn't put it world class or outstanding.
And Chris, go ahead and give us a description of what you're drinking then.
Sure. And again, because I'm a sucker for it, I'm gonna show you guys this awesome can art because I always dig it. But at least from the title, if you guys can see it like well enough, the blackberry mango portion of it, I think, is a great combination for this particular style. Because with Berliner Weiss beers, you typically get that sour, like the lactic acid type of taste to them. And I think what they've done here with adding in that the blackberry and mango juice with it kind of covers that up, so you still get the tart taste, obviously, because blackberries, they're sour on their own. I think it masks a lot of the extra bite that can typically come with this particular style. So I do like it. Other Berliner Weiss beers that I've had in the past have been a little too tart for my taste, so I would say that this is one of the better ones that I've had, like from this particular style. So I'd recommend it for folks that don't particularly like that style, but want to try something that might be in that realm. So I mean, out of a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 6.5, 6.5, like somewhere in there. I think it'd be worth it, and especially from the brewery. From what I've heard so far, 450 North has been pumping out some really great brews as of late. So I would recommend. I'm yet to have a bad beer from them, so I'd recommend it.
I see them all over Facebook, and everything I've had from them, which is only 2, they've got a good demand, and it sounds like it's not just hype. They're actually a fantastic product along with it. So as soon as I can get, what was it? You had Mosaic Nuggets last time?
Yes, Mosaic Nuggets.
I'd like to get that. There's all of those. I would even like to try the Fudge Nuggets, and I mean, they definitely live up just behind the hype. So I've been very impressed with them. I would really like to visit some of their beers for the first time.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I would say my Voodoo Ranger is very similar to the Haze. What was it? It was Voodoo Ranger.
Hazy IPA.
Yeah, the Hazy IPA.
Yeah, this is very similar to that. So I like it. It does say brilliantly balanced for easy drinking. This pale ale is packed with citrus and tropical fruit flavors from 8 different hop varieties. Now, they don't mention what those are, but
when I drink,
obviously I can taste the hops and everything, but it's not real hoppy. But I mean, it's drinkable. I would drink this. It's good beer.
When I drank it, I picked up Simcoe. I always say I can pick out Simcoe out of anything. I definitely picked out Simcoe, I think, and possibly Cascade, maybe some Citra or Galaxy, one or the other. But I had it. I was kind of underwhelmed by it, but I mean, like I said, we've talked about before. New Belgium
rates at 3.8.
So that's about what mine rates. Mine's 3.86.
Yeah,
it's not a bad beer. Like I said, I'm not gonna turn it down. I would be completely content with it being in my refrigerator, but it's not something I would drive to go get like I would Zombie Dust and.
Well, again, I'm back to what you just said. The one reviewer said, I've become a very big Kroger's 6-pack sampler. Just because it's like, but now I have learned my lesson quickly. I buy 2 of each, so I buy 3 different beers instead of 6, because I've learned quickly what happens is, that second one is really the one that tells you, I don't know, well, it is amazing how that first beer you go, oh, that's not bad. And then halfway through the second one, you're like, I don't like this. Or the opposite, you go, damn, I drank both of those and didn't think twice. I mean,
it's funny you say that, because I drank a homebrew and we had the conversation. I said the first one was like, oh, it's really, really good. And you said, what do you think? Well, now I'm a week into it, and I actually think the beer that I'm drinking is getting better as I'm drinking it.
So it's actually improving.
So yeah, I mean, it might actually be. I have 4 tap handles in my basement, and it might actually get its own designated one over the one I was brewing before. So that's pretty exciting to me. I mean, I'm really digging it. I was looking over the recipe. It was all Mosaic hops, which, like I said, I've always liked Simcoe. Mosaic is a descendant, or they hybrided Simcoe to make Mosaic, and I pick up more tropical fruits from it, but I still get that dankiness that I like from the Simcoe. So I don't pick it up.
Daintiness,
dainty, like like earthy. Yeah, danky.
All right, I'll accept that better than dainty. I was like, what the hell is dainty?
No, I'm actually the beer that beer that I brewed. I was looking through my notes. That actually was a 30-minute boil, and I didn't even add a hop addition until 20 minutes. So packed full of flavor and aroma, but it still has a pretty decent bitterness to it, which I was shocked. So I'm actually very impressed with it. It might be one of my tap handles, which kind of brings me to: do you bottle? Do you keg? Why am I'm saying tap handles? What I mean by that is I'm kegging. So I want to talk about most home brewers get started bottling. I don't know if Chris, do you bottle? Do you keg?
So I'd say I'm trending towards kegging more, but as you mentioned, that I definitely fell into that category when I first started home brewing. Excuse me. I picked up the kit. Then also I even started off with the what was it, the what was that old system? With the plastic jug and the plastic bottles and everything. The Mr. Brewers.
Mr. Beer.
Yeah,
Mr. Beer kit.
Yes, yeah. I remember having the brown bottles, and I even had some of them were like an orangish color or something like that.
They screw topped.
Oh yes, yeah. But in either case, that's how I started, and I continued doing that even after I converted over to an all grain system, because I mean, for the most part, wherever I took my home brew, I mean, that's the reason why I did it, was so I could have something to drink whenever I go places, like your house to play cards, or or wherever, to my folks' place for dinner or whatever. So that's why I definitely liked having the transportability, because I didn't have access to a growler at the time. But at least now that don't really get out as much, and I do have access to an extra fridge, so I can set up a kegerator. I do like having the ability to store all 5 gallons inside of a single container, that being the keg, and keep it cool, so I have it here. Here at the house. So I'm trending that way, but at the same time, I do like the advantages of just being able to, pick up a 6-pack and go out and say, here you go, drink a couple and, hand out a couple as well.
Right. Now, I also started with the Mr. Beer kit. That was my entry level. And I agree. I did the same thing. I much preferred their plastic bottles, which I still have, even though I've thrown away given away all my 12-ounce glass bottles. I much prefer, and I want to say, Chris, were they 22 or 24 ounce or
22 ounces?
They were an odd size. They were an odd size. But there was something about them that just made them, obviously easier. And I agree. But before we go on, I wanted to make sure, let everyone know we are live again on YouTube. And you go to the HBYOB.com website now. I know we started last week. It works great. You go right to HBYOB.com, click on the video. You can see us. Go in the chat room. Let us know if you're a bottler or a kegger. I switched quickly, though, to kegging. I shouldn't say that. I stayed bottling with the Mr. Beer kit because you're only making, Chris, maybe you recall. I don't think, Joey, you never did the Mr. Beer kit,
gallons.
But is it 2 gallons?
Yes.
So obviously bottling 2 gallons was easier than 5 gallons when you're doing bottles. But I quickly moved to a corny system, when I started doing the 5 gallons. So, Joey, you being in the store though, and I know you never like when I talk money, but I do think in brewing, that is a key thing for people starting. But besides cleanup and amount of cleaning, what is the price difference between somebody, and I even have to stop and do the math. How many bottles do you need to bottle 5 gallons?
Roughly 53, technically speaking, but after trub loss and everything, I always tell people, our bottles come 24 to a case. I always say, pick up 2 cases and get a 6-pack of a beer you like on the way home. That's enough bottles to bottle everything up. That way you're not buying a 3rd case. The bottles are reusable. That's the benefit to bottling. You can use any pop top bottle that you have. I do recommend pop top bottles over screw top. With the exception of the Mr. Beer, I understand those, but those are plastic, and anything in brewing that plastic wise can scratch. It's a tougher to clean versus glass. You can really get in there and scrub. So long term, glass is the way to go. Short term, plastic's a lot easier to deal with, lightweight. do have kegging systems, and I tell people the biggest question people ask is, I'm starting homebrewing. The progression I see with most homebrewers is they go extract brewing, all grain brewing, kegging. It usually goes in that order. I usually tell people start with extract brewing, then get to kegging, and then get into all grain if price is a factor to you, because once you get into kegging, I feel will be the deterrent of whether you keep brewing or not. I still do bottle occasionally, don't get me wrong, but we've discussed this before: cleaning, sanitizing, filling 50 plus bottles, capping, stowing them away gets to be hassle versus just truly a keg. You clean one big vessel out, you fill it up, and you put it under CO2 gas. You don't have to worry about the sediment in the bottles. It's a lot easier. It's more equipment, but a lot easier.
But real quick before let's just so I can say it though. In bottling, before we knock it too much, obviously the advantage of bottling is price.
Yep.
Convenience, storage.
Mm-hmm. The biggest factor of bottling is you can truly have 50 different batches of beer and have one bottle each.
Correct.
Versus kegging, you've got to have.
And not only that, and I know you're an age guy, but you also could 2 years from now go back to something that you made. If and odds are it's still going to taste okay. It may not be as good as if you drank it a year sooner, but obviously you can store some beers longer. And back to the holidays we talked about, a bottle, if you're bottling, they are more shareable. Obviously it's easier to give somebody, something like that. And again, I want to stay on bottling because Chris used the word growler. Are there many people that actually bottle in a growler versus buying a 24-ounce bottle or a 36-ounce? I mean, is a growler something you could bottle in, or does that screw-on cap not capable of pressure?
I typically don't recommend anyone ever using a screw cap to bottle their beer in. We were taught that with what is the biggest
glass device that you can put a real cap on that you sell?
We have a 1 gallon jug that you could technically put it into.
Oh, so it caps with a real bottle, same size bottle cap, or I didn't realize it's something that big.
So it's got a screw. It has a screw top cap. The con to it is when you naturally, and I guess that would be the best thing we should describe. When you're a home brewer and you are using bottles, 9 times out of 10, you are naturally carbonating in the bottles.
Right.
So you have fermentation. The fermentation's completed. You add a designated amount of sugar into each bottle or as a batch. It doesn't really matter how the sugar gets reintroduced. Then you bottle it up. That's the reason why I don't recommend the screw tops, because CO2 can slowly leak out of those. It's not like a regular beer that the beer is fully carbonated in there. So I always recommend the caps that you crimp on. So when you do that, you technically have started fermentation again, and that's what the CO2 can't go out the airlock, so it dissolves into the solution. So the con to that is there's sediment at the bottom of that. So if you have a big 1 gallon jug, you've got that sediment at the bottom from the natural carbonation. 1, it takes longer to clear than in a keg. And 2, when you pour your first glass, you're swirling up all of that sediment that's at the bottom of the glass jug. That's why I typically don't recommend putting anything bigger than like a 22-ounce bottle or 24-ounce bottle, because you'll get a ton of sediment swirled up and your beer won't be nearly as clear than if it comes from a keg. So that's why I don't, that and the fact that, like I said, because it screws on,
okay,
that CO2 can slowly leak out. I recommend using the pop tops.
For the amateur in the group then, though, let's just now go back, not cost or clean. Let's just totally talk quality of beer. Is there an advantage flavor-wise to Cornian versus, carbonating with sugar in the bottle?
So most people say that the flavor is better in bottle conditioned beers. I don't believe that to be true. However, I drink my beer fairly quickly after I brew it, so it doesn't have a chance to really condition as long as most beers go. I like the quick turnaround time because I like hoppier beer, so I like keeping that aroma. But most unanimously, they say the bottle conditioned beers are better. However, I can't taste a difference personally. So
Well, I would assume it's minimal anyway. Now, and maybe it's just the only way you can do it. But I think the few beer shows, contests, I don't even know sure what the exact word is. I think most of those you're presenting a bottle to the judges. So, is that the purpose, or are you doing that just because that's the easiest way to give your beer to somebody to judge?
I don't know the statistics, but I would say probably most home brewers bottle. I would say that would still probably be the most common way home brewers. And even from a keg, you can put it into bottles. So there's a lot of people who enter in home brew competitions.
Yeah, I bought a bottle pressure thing so I could take from my corny into a small, and actually, and you know what I bought? I bought a thing where I could take it and put it in a 2-liter bottle and reuse a 2-liter and then pressurize that as I use some of the beer.
Well, they have counterflow fillers, and those were, however, they're kind of a pain to clean.
Right.
I gave Chris a growler not too long ago, which I just filled straight from the keg. Those will last perfectly fine.
Now, if you add a little sugar to something like that, does that make a difference? Or in most cases, is the yeast already gone and it won't repressurize?
In what?
Let's say because I think that was something I either thought about back, meaning if I take it out of a corny, and technically, I guess the word go from a corny to a bottle, but more or less to, let's say, more of a growler, but I'm filling that growler up knowing I'm not going to drink it for 3 or 4 days. Is there enough? Then you're saying there's enough carbonation in there to keep it pressurized? Or if I added just a little bit of sugar, would it recarbonate on its own if it had lost any?
It's not going to recarbonate. The answer is yes. Technically it would, but the shorthand, it's not going to carbonate because if you keep it cold, the yeast is dormant. So it's not at a temperature where the yeast can do anything with the sugar. However, if it's uncarbonated and you go, oh crap, you put the sugar in there, you let the beer get to room temperature again, it would do that. And then you could put it back in the fridge. But as long as you kept it in a cold refrigerator, it's just going to stay dormant. That's why we store all of our yeast strains in a refrigerator.
Because we talked about that a while back, and that's the difference between and again, there are growlers that are pressurized, and there's growlers that are not. So, Chris, so when's the last time you bottled?
Actually, the last beer that the last beer that I brewed, this was just a couple months back. I wound up bottling, I would say about 2 6-packs of it. Like I said, the rest I wound up kegging. So about 3/4 of it I kegged, and then the other part I wound up bottling just so I can have that again, just for the transportation factor. Because I told some of my buddies that I was brewing again, and they wanted to try some. So I just set aside a little bit for them to have, and then the rest for me that I can just toss in my keg and put in the fridge.
And then we'll stay on bottling in a second. And then for bottling, then there's obviously a capping system, And obviously the caps aren't reusable, but they're fairly inexpensive. You can buy those HBYOB.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a zillion different styles of cappers,
Yes. I use a wing capper.
Is that one where you can set it up and put the bottle underneath all that? Or is it like a hand type deal where you do it per bottle?
That one's the hand crank one where you kind of come down with both hands. The problem, I would say the one problem that I've had with those since I've been using it for for almost as long as I've been brewing, is that unless you center the cap correctly onto the bottle before you start to try and slam down the two sides of the capper, you can sometimes leave small gaps on the side of the cap after you're done. So just when you're doing it, make sure that you have a complete seal all the way around the cap after you're done. But otherwise, I mean, that's the one that I've primarily used, but I've seen the other ones that you're talking about.
Right, they're like a tabletop.
Right, yeah.
And Joey, HBYOB, you sell both. I mean, how many different cappers do you sell? Or I'm sure you can get about anything, but how many do you stock normally? How many different types? Well,
there's typically the two styles. You've got the one with the wings, and then the bench capper. We carry both styles. By far the red one, which everyone knows, are gray. Handheld ones are the most popular. I actually prefer them just because over the years I've collected so many different styles of bottle. The bench cappers, I'm always adjusting the back headstock, and by the time I adjust the back headstock, I could have just done it by hand.
Done it.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you have consistent bottles, I recommend the bench capper. If you're like me, where you've got 10 years of brewing and a bunch of different bottles, I recommend just a hand capper.
All right. So those are mainly pluses with bottling. Obviously, to me, the big negative of the bottling is just the cleaning. I mean, if all that was easy and again, I know that, hey, there's systems and, if you, and I did it for a while, if you get in the habit of, obviously, as soon as you empty the bottle, rinse the bottle, as soon as it's done rinsed, put it in the dishwasher or put it in a solution. If you do all that, obviously it's
work.
It's easier, but yes, all those are steps. Hell, trust me, by the time you've drank your 5th beer, especially a home brew at night, 1 in the morning,
right.
You're not cleaning that.
Just leave it sitting on the table.
I would say, with bottling, it's truly just the time and the work. It does technically, like I said, I don't believe so, but most people who are beer critics will say that the bottle conditioned beer is better. So don't get me wrong, I still occasionally bottle. The times I bottle is the times where I've got a beer that I just know for a fact, kind of like I should have bottled this, a stout that I made, a beer that I'm not a huge fan of. So I know they're going to last a long time.
Okay, that's good then. So if you had both, is that something you've learned over the years? If you go, this is a questionable beer that I just made, would bottling be the first thing you would think versus kegging, so you didn't have to worry about storing it as long, or at least keeping a corny full of something you don't want to drink? Is that a consideration? If you're more experimental, maybe the bottling kind of gives you that advantage of not tying up your equipment.
Yeah, my very experimental batches. I shouldn't even say very experimental. My specialty beers, like high alcohol beers or just beers that I know that I will enjoy, but it's not something I could drink in a session. Those are the ones I like to bottle, just because I also like to store them over long periods of time, see how the character changes in them, versus your average pale ale, IPA, those style of beers. I know I'm going to drink them up. And if I don't drink them up, it's because, quite honestly, I should probably pour it down the drain. Never done. But, there's no reason for me to bottle a style of beer that I know that I like.
The worst beer you brew, put it in a pot, throw some onions in there, put some bratwurst, put it on a burner for about 3 hours. Those bratwurst will be damn good. Then throw away the beer.
That's what you also said earlier. They make great Christmas gifts.
There you go. But pawn them off on somebody else.
Yeah, you just made me think of something else, though, that I do think was a concern when I was bottling, and again, wasn't a great brewmaster by any means, but I always felt that the amount of sugar. And I guess I don't want to use just straight sugar, but whatever. I mean, in most cases, I think it's sugar you're adding some type of sugar to ferment, which obviously will give you the pressure. I've always felt that was another area where I could screw up the beer versus Cornian. I know I'm done. The recipe's the recipe. I don't have to worry about that flavor changing. But I'm going to ask it this way, though. Is that a benefit or a negative? Meaning, does that give you one more opportunity to change the characteristic of that beer, where obviously in Cornian you don't? Is it a plus or a negative that you still have to add another ingredient at this point that can vary? I know for a fact, sometimes, hey, I wasn't when it comes to bottling, I wasn't the best measurer in the world. I know you could do tablets and do things to make it perfect. And I've seen people weigh the sugars and, I know I could bottle, 24 and, 12 would taste one way and 12 would taste another a little bit different, and I think that's because I did not, wasn't as precise, but.
So I guess that's a good segue. Is I had a customer came in the store a couple weeks ago, and then he just came in yesterday. He said, "Hey, I brewed this beer. I aged it for a year. It was this really big beer. I'm so excited. It was like 13% alcohol. It was this, it was that. It's not carbonated. What do I do?" And I said, so we troubleshooted without getting into that story. I basically said, if you would have kegged it, you wouldn't have had that problem. You wouldn't even have to think about it.
Right.
I said, what did you use to condition it with? And he said, I used honey. So I took the measurements and I was like, Was the honey this? It just, like you said, it turned into this batch of beer. He had forget the money. He had over a year invested in this batch of beer between aging and doing this. It's flat. And
sugar to me would be the worst option at that point, because I know enough to know about honey. Honey is very variable. No more than beer is variable in alcohol content. Honey is variable in actual sugar content based on what the hell the bees were, sucking on before they went back to the hive. I actually
watched a good documentary on Netflix about honey and what they do to trick. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, it's bee puke. It's bee puke.
Well, no, it's not even real honey. We're buying not real honey. Yeah. But
I saw the same documentary.
It's a whole nother it's a whole nother conversation. But he's got all these beers. He bottled 50 plus beers, and they're all flat. What do I do? And I said, well, the sugar's in them. What was the ABV? So we got talking. I actually recommended to him, get the caps off of them, put a few granules of our champagne yeast. To maybe the fact that you aged it for a year, there was just no living yeast.
No yeast left.
So I said, to maybe jumpstart fermentation again to get him carbonated. He came back in and said, I appreciate it. That didn't work. Now what? And unfortunately, I had someone who was part of a homebrew club in the store at the time he came in. We troubleshooted. We talked. We went on and on and on and on. The consensus was, if you would have kegged it, this wouldn't have been a problem in the first place, which is a shitty, answer. But unfortunately, he's got this beer, which obviously he's not going to dump, but what do? You are, when you put that beer in that bottle and you put the cap on it, I've had beers everywhere from, like that guy's example, flat as it can get. I've also the opposite, where you open the top and it goes overflowing all over the top. You really run that risk when you are bottle conditioning. You really don't know what's going to happen. Versus when you keg, if you overcarbonate it, there's things you can do to get the carbonation out. If you undercarbonate it, which is better than overcarbonating it, there's very simple steps you can take to get it to the proper carbonation. It's like the beer I'm drinking right now is a stout that we've talked about the stout quite a few times. I've had it forever. I don't like my stouts super carbonated. I can control that with, and you can with, I get it. You can control that with bottle conditioning, but a lot of customers ask me, what do you do with your beer? How do you know when it's done? What do you know this? If it tastes good to me, and I'll have to worry about whether it's completely done fermenting and whatever when you get to kegging. And I guess that would be a good segue, is now we see the pros and cons to bottling. Why do you want to keg?
Well, like I said, though, before we end on that, obviously, it's just another step, and you have to decide what's important to you. Is it flavor, cost, labor? Obviously you have to weigh all those three and make your choice. So I am, and again, I think the first corny I bought, I actually bought used from somebody. Then I ended up somebody I knew someone from 7-Up, and I got a deal on a few more. But corny, and let's go that route. I know we went right negative with bottling. To me, the negatives with cornies obviously is the initial cost. You do require more storage. You have to be able to refrigerate, obviously, the whole 5 gallons. In most cases, I do know some people, or I've read that, they will, do it warm and then maybe, like you said, put in a growler or something, then refrigerate it that way, because they don't have the storage. But in most cases, you have to do it right. You have to have the ability to at least store those, at least 1 5-gallon thing in, something that's refrigerated. Then you have the cost of CO2. You have hoses, even though there's no cleaning every once in a while. Obviously you do have to you do have to clean your hoses and that kind of stuff. So there aren't just a lot of, there are negatives to also, using a keg, but, is there any other negative that I didn't mention? Not to just be negative, but I just wanted to get those out of the way before we go into the positives.
I would say the biggest negative to kegs, to me, breaks down to 2 things. It comes to, the first thing is, if you don't like the beer that's in your keg, you're stuck with it, and you can't put nothing else in it till you finish it. Right, versus bottles, they can stay stowed away, right, and you can drink here or there. The second thing is, truly, I think with most people, what hesitates most people from kegging is, at that point, you're pretty much committing to have a designated beer refrigerator. You can make a Keyser out of a chest freezer. There's a lot of different options, but the average house isn't going to equip a 5-gallon, corny keg or Sankey keg or, whatever you're using.
Right.
The average household
I have a
refrigerator
second fridge that I modified. I had a second refrigerator that I modified.
So, that's plugged into your basement, your garage, wherever it is. The biggest thing that holds people up is, where am I going to keep this cold? Your entire batch versus bottling. Bottling, you can put a 6-pack. You can put one beer in your refrigerator at a time. So those are the two biggest things I would say is the biggest cons to kegging that kind of slow people.
Chris, do you have a secondary fridge? Where are you storing your cornies?
I actually just bought a secondary fridge a couple of weeks ago. So now I finally have a place to put my keg, but I've had a keg for, almost 2 years now. And the only place that I've been able to keep it is typically out in the garage. I mean, that's where I've been, I've had to store mine. And the only time I can really, have a cold keg is during the winter time. I'll toss down in the garage and go out, grab a pull from the keg, right, 2, 3, 4 times a night. But that's only when it's cold outside. When it comes to the summertime, it's, you're kind of almost, I wouldn't necessarily say forced to bottle, but it's easier, or I guess it behooves you to bottle if you don't have that secondary fridge or a place to keep everything cold.
Right. Now, Joey, do you find, because I did it quickly, I quickly went from 1 corny to 3, and I think now I have 4 or 5. I mean, do you find that most people, and is that a selling point or a negative when people ask? I mean, do you realize that in most cases, and I guess we have to assume they have at least a refrigerator space for 1, but are most people needing even more than 1 corny to start kegging?
I mean, 1 is all you need. And I think Chris is actually a good example of doing both and why he did both. Now that he's got a designated refrigerator, I have a feeling he'll almost never bottle now. So usually the first thing most home brewers, when they make that leap, they think they need 1, they get 1 going. I tell people 2 is technically what you need to shoot for. That way, as soon as 1 keg is empty, you're immediately serving your next one. You're not going. There's no downtime between kegs. So I tell people, if you're going to invest into 1, make sure your refrigerator, where you're storing it, can accommodate 2, because you're probably going to jump to 2, even if you're not serving 2 at the same time. You might want to go with 2. That's typically what I see. But then again, once people get into kegging and they see how easy it is, I've had a customer show me 16 beers he had on tap. So, Jesus. I mean,
what I probably used to know how long, or maybe as long as you keep it under at least pressurized to some point, even at room temperature, how long would a beer store in a corny?
So that kind of goes to the debate you've had for, technically speaking, if beer is stored properly, in my opinion, the answer is technically indefinitely. It never goes bad. Obviously, you don't want oxygen getting to it. You don't want light getting to it. You don't want it going through huge temperature fluctuations. But if beer is on CO2, it's in your refrigerator, there's nothing that's going to spoil on you. However, 6 months to a year, you're going to lose your hop character. You're going to lose your malt character. And like a beer that I drank that was close to 10 years old, it just tastes like water and alcohol. But there's nothing there that's going to make you ill or makes it technically go bad. It doesn't taste great.
Is there a percentage of pressure or carbonation you have to have when you're storing it? Or as long as it's under pressure and no oxygen could get in or out, is it going to store the same?
So I keep thinking of a Queen song. As long as it's under pressure, but as long as it's under pressure, there's not a designated amount. Obviously, you don't want oxygen getting to it. So whether it's 1 PSI, 10 PSI, typically speaking, I always tell people you're going to want to serve your beer between 8 PSI and 14 PSI, depending on your system. That's kind of a happy medium. So as long as it's under there and you didn't take it off the gas, you can open the lid and you didn't have any leaks anywhere, I mean, you're good to go.
Well, staying with today's theme, I would say instead of a happy medium, it's a hoppy medium.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, I had to try. And again, I'll even go back, and I know we made comments of this 2 or 3 podcasts ago. I used, which, you've, yelled at me about, but I used the paintball system. I bought adapters. I had all the little paintball because I adapted my fridge internally, meaning all my hoses, my tank, everything was in the refrigerator. So I could get 2 cornies and one of the larger paintball CO2s all in there. And my, and it just worked for me. Just size, cost. My whole family was paintballer, so we had the tanks. So, and it worked. And again, I know you say there could be oil in there. I don't know. Like I said, I've never done it different, so I couldn't tell you there was a flavor difference or anything. But I did mine on a budget. Used used cornies. I had to buy new gaskets and some things here and there. Bought hoses and clamps and all that, and wired it all myself. So
I would say that's probably
worked out well.
That kind of goes back to the I made a comment, a customer, he said it a long time ago, and it's never stopped. It always is in my brain. When you start getting to kegging, you almost always, I don't care, because I get a lot of customers that come in the store who truly don't homebrew. They're coming there for, we fill CO2 tanks in the store. We have all the little pieces and parts for kegerators. So they come into the store and they're not even home brewers. Once you start getting into kegging, you start getting into the DIY side of things again. Back to the customer that always reminds me, he goes, I'm not MacGyver. When you start getting into kegging, you're kind of getting into the MacGyver a little bit, in the sense of you have to know how to hook the fittings up. Even if you have a kegerator at home, which is the reason why I got into kegging real soon, I already had a kegerator. So all I had to do was just cut off the Sankey connection and put the ball lock fittings on, and I was good to go. But even that, you used to have to, there is a learning curve to it. It's not a huge one, but there is a learning curve to it. And some people just say fill a bottle up and put a cap on it. There's not much explanation there. So I would say it's probably another con to kegging is there is a learning curve.
But like we described earlier, though, you say that, but at the same time, you can screw up bottling beer also. I mean, it's not MacGyvering, but at the same time, you can screw it up. Again, I came home one time to a wet floor with the refrigerator and realized I don't know the word gasket's right, but one of my,
seals,
connectors on the corny had come loose, so the pressure going in one side was pumping beer out the other, which filled the bottom of the fridge, which eventually came out onto the floor. Probably the worst disaster in the beer making I ever had. Since then, though, I bought a tub that fit in the bottom. My cornies would fit in the tub, so I always figured, well, the minimum now, maybe a half a gallon of beer would fit in that tub before it hit my floor, so a little less clean up. But there's nothing better though than opening that fridge, pulling out that spout. I don't know, is there a technical term, Joey? But and pouring your own draft beer, into your a gallon, a pitcher or your own glass, and go and sit down. I know opening a bottle of your own beer is one thing, but something about getting your own draft beer out of the refrigerator just tastes good, and controlling the carbonation. That is another thing, that comes back to the flavor and the recipe and something like that. Again, that is something it is a science. So obviously a bottler can maybe control it some if you're good at it, but with the corning and the gauges, I'm able to control the amount of, carbonation, which I think is important.
So I guess that would lead to the pros of kegging. It's easy. It's quick. It's easy in the sense of it's easier than bottling. It's quick. It doesn't take as much of your time, and your beer is carbonated quicker, faster, sooner, which most people in brewing, they want to drink their beer. They're so anxious about their batch of beer. It's there that much quicker. As far as transport goes, you can fill growler fills, which most local craft breweries, you're used to that anyway. You can have many varieties on tap. They're always set there to go. The beer's clearer, quicker. So those are all the pros to kegging your beer. Is I had a beer that I took to an event that was a week old. You could not do that with bottling. It's impossible. I had a beer from start to finish, ready to go to an event in 1 week. You could not do that bottling. Bottling, it takes longer to age because, like I said, you restarted fermentation. You can add gelatin. You can do all these different things to a keg. You can add secondary flavors like the beer Chris is drinking. You could add mango juice to it. You don't have to worry about the sugars starting fermentation again. You can do all kind. You can kill the yeast because you don't have to rely on those yeast to create the carbonation. There's a lot of cool things you can do with kegging, and I think most home brewers, they like to brew. Most home brewers will unanimously agree that cleaning and bottling are the two shittiest things in home brewing. So kegging knocks some of those out. I mean, you still have to clean a keg, don't get me wrong, but cleaning one keg over 53 bottles is a lot easier. You're sanitizing one keg. So the convenience factor, and me and Chris went to a homebrew competition. It was keg only. We had a blast. Would we have done a bottling competition? Probably not, because that would require a whole lot more effort. And we're going to go to it again this year. I hope that you're going to go with me, Chris. I mean, it's...
Oh, we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking it down.
Yeah, we're going to... screw the Solitarians. We're coming for you.
We've talked, because like I said, my brewing skills, I only did, extract. I would be I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything honest, but I mean, I have honestly fermented, did the whole deal, and realized, and at that point, I literally knew I left a small amount of beer in my corny, in my fridge of the same type. And I might have opened that corny, emptied that fermenter, sealed that corny back up. The word minimal cleaning might even be more than I did. But, and I could have been wrong, could have been right. But in my opinion, at that point, that beer, there was, because it was under pressure, that corny stayed pressurized and had some beer the whole time. It stayed cold. Right. I, in my head, and I don't know, maybe you two will both say, no, that's nuts. But in my mind, I was like, I really don't think there's a reason to clean this at this point, versus if I'm refilling it immediately, put it back under carbonation and putting it back in my fridge. I really felt personally that there was less chance of contamination doing that than there would have been cleaning it actually. So, in that case, I had no cleaning.
There's a lot of logic to that. I mean, Craig Tube, shout out to Craig Tube. He's a guy who I really watched a lot of videos, and he still does pre-hopped kits, but he does keg, back to convenience factor. He lives in Canada, so he saves a lot of money home brewing. I watch his videos, and he does exactly that. I mean, it kind of goes back to if you're taking a keg out, it's been under CO2 pressure the whole time. If you're putting a beer very similar back into it, you sanitize it from the first beer. It's going into a refrigerator where if there are any wild yeast, they're going to be dormant. I mean, that's I don't want to use the word really lazy way of doing it, but there's not much risk there. I mean, there's a little bit of yeast that's going to be caked up. I don't care what you do at the bottom of your keg, but
I don't know for a fact, but in my mind, I got a feeling Budweiser isn't emptying those multi-million gallon tanks, cleaning them between every batch. I bet there's a system and a time it's done, but I bet they're not. I bet they also know.
I would disagree.
I think to a certain extent they almost have to.
I would disagree. They're getting there and cleaning them out. They're using an acid wash. I'm sure a machine is doing it. Probably not a person in there scrubbing it out.
Every time, I don't even know how we'd find that out. I doubt it. I doubt they are.
I bet you.
Because I'm assuming they've done the research and they realize if I'm putting the same beer right back in without anything being open, meaning, and I'm guessing they have the ability to it's being tubed right in, meaning there's no air being seen or touched. And if it was already, I'm guessing same thing. I'm even in a big system like that, stopping, emptying it, opening it, and cleaning it is better chance of being contaminated than just refilling it. If no air ever gets to it. I'm sorry. If it's under pressure, there's no oxygen in or out, and you're feeding it back in through tubes anyway, I just think if you open up and clean it, there's better chance of there becoming contamination than if you just refill it, even in that large scale.
Well, when you start talking contamination and everything, that's a whole new topic for another show.
When I say contamination, I'm even talking flavor changes and differences in that. I mean, I'll make this, in a simple term, because I was one of these when someone told me, I went, and again, it wasn't even me. It was the, and I don't even know what it was. What was the little show on the Food Network where they showed you how different foods were made?
Good Eats. Oh,
no, not Good Eats.
How it's made.
How it's made.
No, Unwrapped.
Unwrapped did the dumb suckers. Okay. And I always thought, man, and I'm one of those, don't ask me why, but I go to the bank. There's a tub of suckers. I'm grabbing the one that has the question mark on it. Just give me that. And they're weird flavors. And for my whole life, I always thought, man, somebody is mixing that weird flavor up and giving it to me. Now, maybe me and Joey's always had this conversation, but watching that show, I realized the only reason they have a question mark sucker, Chris, is because the grape was in there. It's almost empty. They dump cherry flavor in there for the next half hour or however long it is. They know there's no way it's going to be pure cherry. So
it's a mix.
They know how many suckers it's going to take for that to be a question mark sucker to where the next sucker is cherry. They're not cleaning. They are not, meaning, hey, I might say that Budweiser, it might be Bud Light. And then you know what? Hey, the next 500,000 gallons is Busch Light. I'm just saying, I'm not convinced that they are sanitizing those, and we'll use the word big cornies every time they put a new batch in. It isn't happening.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, not that we get off on a tangent. One more thing, because NCAA tournament this weekend, the new Dilly Dilly commercial says that Budweiser. Did you see the stat they give when they do that? The new one where they're switching out a corny keg and all these little, ends, is that Budweiser changes there is a keg of Budweiser changed every 6 seconds in the world.
I believe that.
Every 6 seconds, a keg of Budweiser is being, the empty's going away, a full one's going in. I truly did the math. I don't know what it is now. I mean, it was like, I forget how many millions of cans of beer a day, just in kegs.
Right.
The commercial said kegs. So I'm assuming that they're talking, mainly bars, switching out that many kegs worldwide.
I've heard a statistic that is Budweiser's has more beer go down their drain than I think the craft beer industry, close to it. And that they only employ the brewery that has, I think it's like 90% of the sales employs 10% of the people. So
I'd agree.
Cool. They're efficient. They're great. They have a lot of money for advertising, and Dilly Dilly grabs on.
Right.
But when you're talking craft beer, the people who are getting jobs, who are the one inspiring new, innovative technologies and different styles of beer. I mean, that's the beer that I'm enjoying right now.
Exactly.
As far as whatever Budweiser does, I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect Budweiser. They have a consistent product, but
they also have a lot of products. You're just talking Budweiser, the actual beer. I mean, that company, they make a lot of other beers.
If you get a chance, watch Beer Wars. I think it was on Netflix for a while. Watch Beer Wars. They want their whole grocery store shelf. They don't want you having any other options. So they're going to buy every brewery and they're going to do whatever. And that's just, to me, I love the fact of, we're getting back to farm to table. We're aware of what we're putting in our bodies. The 450 West beer that Chris has, I want to drink that. I have no gumption to drink a Budweiser beer. I'll drink it if you give it to me for free. But as far as me giving them my money, I'm kind of over them. Not that they're bad. They do a lot of things that I very much
respect. Have their function. They have their purpose.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, as far as their marketing campaign, I mean,
and I've always heard that the beer inside's the cheap part. The can, the advertising, that's the money.
Well, it's even like Chris goes. He's a sucker for can art, so maybe Budweiser should invest in better can art.
Maybe if they did, they get me to buy it.
But I will say I am ecstatic. Back to big breweries, Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR, has a pale ale out now that people are saying is pretty damn good. And I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
I'll look for it.
So, I mean, it just goes back to where I'm a hypocrite. I mean, I'm a hypocrite in the sense that there's another big brewery, but you know what? I've heard they've got a decent product out, and I want to try it. And they say for the price, it's a darn good pale ale, so I can't wait to get my hands on it. So,
all right.
Budweiser probably owns them too, but
all right. Chris, you got to vote now. Kegging or bottling? You can only do one. You can only do
one. I would have to say, and I think the one thing that we didn't really touch upon tonight in terms of the pros for kegging, we hit it. I think we hit upon it like tangentially, but I'll just say it directly. It's consistency. So when you talk about brewing beer, if as homebrewers, if we're really trying to nail down, our process and trying to better understand, how can really kind of hone in on a specific recipe? Because I know folks, and Joey, you could probably attest to this. While some guys like to bounce around to different styles in terms of what they like to brew, some folks like to take maybe just 2 or 3 recipes and really try and work on them and tweak maybe a couple things here or there. So when it comes to evaluating how well you've done, your process, your efficiency and whatnot, I mean, if you switch to kegging, you're kind of removing a few variables that can change how you'd wind up evaluating your entire brewing process. So if you do have just a kegging system where you can dump everything in, you don't have to take, something like this and, try and calculate how many, volumes of CO2 that you need to use, how much primary sugar that you need. And that might change the characteristics of the beer that you were talking about earlier, Mark. So when it comes to kegging, I think it offers you a more simplistic path to say that, all right, well, I have this recipe. I really love this recipe, and I want to try and, make just a few tweaks here and there. And I really think I'll have something that I could just brew. I don't need to brew any other recipe for the rest of my life. I just want to brew this recipe. Kegging offers you that way to say, okay, well, now that I've got it all nailed out, I've got the whole recipe, laid out. Kegging can simplify that process so that now every time that you brew your beer, it should be almost the exact same beer. If your process stays the same, you're going to wind up to the exact same beer. You don't have to worry about, all right, well, I added a little bit more priming sugar, or, I didn't let it sit in I didn't let the bottle sit in this temperature or whatever. You can keep everything consistent.
So you're voting kegging?
Absolutely.
All right. Joey sells the stuff, and I think he would probably not want to go on one side or the other. I'm going to say kegging also. And I would just tell somebody, if you're going to start, try to build that into your budget a little bit, because I think in the long run, it'll keep you brewing maybe longer than if you bottle and get frustrated in a hurry. But I mean, I think there's a function and a time where you'd want to bottle, but I agree with you. The purity of the flavor and the simplicity makes it, to me, worth the investment. So
I believe everyone has to get started somewhere.
Sure.
Bottling is a great thing. And I know almost unanimously when people come in and finally get their kegging system, they come back and go, why didn't I start doing this years ago?
Right.
Versus when it comes to extract versus all grain brewers, people kind of float back and forth. Kegging is unanimously I should have did this a long time ago.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, we've been over an hour. So we will not be here next week. Me and Chris will be on the fantasy thing. We haven't really decided or even talked if we were going to maybe try to do a beer thing without Joey or not, but I know Joey will be on vacation next week, probably drinking some, I don't know. No, maybe, but I'm guessing when you get to Hawaii, there's probably some homebrew out there that you wouldn't get here. That's probably going to be worth trying. You're going to have to send us a tweet or a picture or something. Maybe we can talk about it 2 weeks from now, maybe.
So I was thinking, if I'm in Hawaii, you think of Mad Dog beer. I wonder if there's like a Dog the Bounty Hunter beer.
Maybe.
Dog the Bounty Hunter beer. All right. Well,
I need a picture of that.
You enjoy your vacation, enjoy your little time off. Anybody knows anything about being in small business, you don't get many vacations, so you got to enjoy them when you get there. Chris, thanks for joining us tonight. Real quick, Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX, and then actually, as of for next week, and actually not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, you can find me at HBYOB. I will be manning the store in Joey's absence, me and my wife. So you can come down to the store and check us out and watch us. Try and figure out what the hell it is Joey does for 8 hours a day during the week.
Maybe I'll get an extra couple pieces of grain because you know how the scale works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or will you just put your finger on it?
I'll charge you double. Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be fun. Maybe that'll be a good time for me to come down because when I go down there and Joey's there, he just gives me a hard time. Joey, again, we've told him you're going on vacation, but still right now, give us the store information. Where can people find you?
So all my information is in the description of the YouTube channel. And you can reach me personally at joey@hbyob.com if you want to email me.
And again, HBYOB.com now has all the videos and everything. So you can watch them later if you don't want to join us live. I'm Easy Kill. You can find me on Twitter at A Fantasy Fan. Had a good time tonight. Hope we helped somebody. Feel free to, put a comment down below on the YouTube or send Joey an email or, anything. Or if you have a topic you want us to talk about, we'll be more than happy to, go there. We're always looking for topics or beers maybe in the area. If someone knows of something they want us to try. Mm-hmm. Do you have a topic for 2 weeks from now, or are we just probably going to wing it, come up with something when you get back from vacation?
So I think when we get back, what we should discuss is we should have a beer review, and we will just talk about anything and everything, vacation, whatever.
There you go. All right. We will talk
just
about
life.
All right.
There we go.
We'll try to find some Hawaiian beers or something. I bought a key lime. I don't think it's Hawaiian, no. Key lime. I bought some key lime beer tonight. I don't know.
Ooh.
It was key lime. So that's kind of what I was going to bring to the table. Maybe that kind of goes with a Hawaiian theme. All right. Here's hoping all you people in Hawaii can, get your lay on. We will see all of you at a minimum in 2 weeks. Maybe me and Chris jump on, do something next week, quick and easy. We haven't really talked about it before he gets store bound. We'll see how it goes. Again, thanks for joining us, HBYOB Brewcast. We'll catch you in a couple of weeks.
Aloha.